In a grand manor house near a flourishing village, there lived a wealthy merchant with his beloved daughter and wife. Their life was filled with joy and warmth, and the daughter grew to be not only beautiful on the outside, but possessed a heart of pure gold. Their happiness, however, was not to last forever. One cold winter morning, the mother fell terribly ill. As she lay on her deathbed, pale as the snow that fell outside her window, she called her daughter to her side. "My precious child," she whispered, taking her daughter's small hand in hers. "Life may bring you hardships, but promise me you will always remain pious and good. Keep your heart pure and never let bitterness take root within you. If you do this, God will protect you, and I shall look down from heaven and watch over you always." With these words, she squeezed her daughter's hand one last time, closed her eyes, and departed from this world. The daughter, heartbroken but remembering her promise, visited her mother's grave every day. Sometimes she would sit there for hours, tending to the flowers she had planted and talking to her mother as if she were still there. In summer, she sought shelter from the sun under a nearby tree. In autumn, she swept away the fallen leaves. In winter, she brushed away the snow that covered the grave like a white blanket. When spring arrived again, bringing with it new life and hope, the father decided it was time to remarry. His new wife was a woman of fashion and high society, who brought with her 2 daughters of her own. At first glance, these girls appeared beautiful, with their fine features and elegant clothes, but their hearts were as cold as winter frost and as dark as a moonless night. The moment their mother married the merchant, the true nature of the step-family revealed itself. They stripped the maiden of her beautiful clothes, taking away her silk dresses and soft shoes. "These are too fine for a servant," they sneered, throwing her a rough gray dress and wooden shoes. "Here's what you deserve to wear." They forced her from her beautiful bedroom and made her sleep in a cold corner by the kitchen hearth, among the ashes and cinders. "Look at our little ash girl," they would mock. "Too dirty to be seen, too common to be among us." From that day forward, they called her Aschenputtel and treated her as nothing more than a servant in her own home. From dawn until long after dusk, Aschenputtel worked without rest. She rose before the sun to fetch water from the well, light the fires, cook the meals, and clean the house. Her stepsisters would purposely spill things and create messes just to watch her clean them up. They would throw peas and lentils into the ashes, laughing as she had to pick them out one by one. Yet, through all this cruelty, Aschenputtel remained kind and gentle, remembering her promise to her mother. One day, her father announced he was traveling to a great fair in a neighboring city. He asked his stepdaughters what they would like him to bring back. The first stepsister demanded the finest silk dress with gold embroidery. The second asked for pearls and jewels to make all other girls jealous. When he turned to Aschenputtel, she simply said, "Father, all I ask is that you bring me the first twig that brushes against your hat on your journey home." The father bought everything the stepsisters asked for, and on his way home, a hazel twig brushed against his hat. Remembering his daughter's modest request, he broke it off and brought it home. Aschenputtel thanked him with genuine gratitude and immediately went to her mother's grave. There she planted the twig, watering it with her tears and her daily visits. The twig took root and grew into a magnificent hazel tree, and in its branches lived a magical white bird. Whenever Aschenputtel wished for something, she would come to the tree and say, "Shake and quiver, little tree, throw gold and silver down to me." The bird would then throw down whatever she had wished for. It came to pass that the king of the land announced a grand festival that would last 3 days. All the eligible young women in the kingdom were invited, for the prince would choose his bride from among them. The news created great excitement throughout the land, and in Aschenputtel's house, her stepsisters could talk of nothing else. "I shall wear my silk dress with golden threads," declared the elder sister. "And I shall wear my velvet gown with diamond buttons," said the younger. They called Aschenputtel to help them prepare, making her spend hours styling their hair, polishing their shoes, and adjusting their clothes until everything was perfect. As she helped them, Aschenputtel gathered her courage and asked, "Might I go to the festival too?" Her stepmother laughed cruelly. "You? Look at yourself. You have no proper clothes, no shoes fit for dancing. You would bring shame upon this family." But Aschenputtel persisted in asking until her stepmother, thinking to teach her a lesson, emptied a bowl of lentils into the ashes of the hearth. "Very well," she said with a smirk. "If you can pick out all these lentils in 2 hours, you may come with us." Aschenputtel went to the garden and called out, "Dear little pigeons, turtle doves so sweet, all birds that fly from earth to sky so fleet, come help me sort the good lentils to keep, the bad ones you may eat." Immediately, 2 white pigeons flew in through the kitchen window, followed by turtle doves and many other birds. They quickly picked out all the good lentils, finishing well within the time limit. But the stepmother went back on her word, emptying 2 bowls of lentils into the ashes and demanding they be sorted in 1 hour. Again, the birds came to help, but even when Aschenputtel completed this impossible task, her stepmother said, "It's no use. You have nothing suitable to wear and cannot dance. You would only embarrass us." After they had left for the festival, Aschenputtel ran to her mother's grave and stood under the hazel tree, tears streaming down her face as she said, "Shake and quiver, little tree. Throw gold and silver down to me." The white bird threw down a dress of silk and silver, with slippers embroidered in silk and silver. Aschenputtel quickly dressed herself and hurried to the festival. When she entered the great hall of the palace, everyone stopped to stare at her beauty. Her stepsisters and stepmother didn't recognize her, believing her to be a foreign princess because of her magnificent attire. The prince immediately approached her, took her hand, and danced with her all evening. He would dance with no one else, and when anyone else asked her to dance, he would say, "She is my partner." They danced until late in the night, when Aschenputtel knew she must return home before her family. Though the prince tried to escort her, she slipped away into the night. The second night of the festival, the bird provided an even more beautiful dress of gold and precious stones. Again, the prince danced only with her, and again she slipped away before she could be discovered. On the third and final night, her dress outshone all others, made of the purest gold and decorated with brilliant gems. Her slippers were solid gold, and she looked more beautiful than anyone had ever seen her. The prince, determined not to lose her again, had ordered the palace steps to be covered with pitch. As Aschenputtel fled that night, one of her golden slippers stuck fast in the pitch, for she was in such a hurry that she couldn't free it. The prince picked up the slipper, declaring that he would marry only the maiden whose foot fitted perfectly. The next day, he began trying the slipper on every eligible maiden in the kingdom. When he arrived at Aschenputtel's house, the older stepsister tried first, but her toes were too big. Her mother handed her a knife and whispered, "Cut off your toes. When you are queen, you won't need to walk anywhere." The sister did as she was told, forced her bleeding foot into the slipper, and went before the prince. As they rode past the hazel tree, 2 white pigeons called out, "Look and see. There's blood within the shoe. The shoe's too small. This bride won't do." The prince looked down and saw blood streaming from the slipper. He returned the false bride home and asked the second sister to try. Her heel was too large, so her mother told her to cut it off, saying, "A queen rides more than she walks." But the pigeons sang their warning again, and the prince saw through this deception as well. "Are there no other young women in your household?" the prince asked the father. "Only Aschenputtel," he replied. "But she couldn't possibly—" "I wish to see her," the prince insisted. Aschenputtel was called, and after washing her face and hands, she appeared before the prince. The moment she sat down and slipped her foot into the golden shoe, it fit perfectly. When she stood up, the prince recognized her face and knew he had found his true bride. The stepmother and stepsisters turned pale with rage and fear, but nothing could be done. As Aschenputtel and the prince rode to the palace for their wedding, the white pigeons from the hazel tree flew down and perched on her shoulders, one on the right and one on the left. During the wedding ceremony, the stepsisters tried to win favor by standing close to Aschenputtel. But as the wedding party walked to the church, the pigeons pecked out one eye from each sister. When they walked back after the ceremony, the pigeons pecked out their other eyes. Thus, the stepsisters' wickedness and deceit were punished with blindness for the rest of their days. Aschenputtel and her prince lived in great joy and prosperity. The hazel tree continued to grow on her mother's grave, and the white bird lived there always, reminding everyone who passed by that goodness, patience, and staying true to oneself would always be rewarded in the end. The merchant, seeing how his neglect had allowed his daughter to suffer, begged her forgiveness, which she gave freely, for her heart had remained pure and good through all her hardships. She welcomed him to live in the palace with her, where he spent the rest of his days making up for lost time with his daughter and helping others in need. And so, Aschenputtel's story teaches us that true beauty lies not in fine clothes or perfect features, but in the goodness of one's heart. It shows us that even in the darkest times, keeping faith and remaining true to our principles will lead us to happiness in the end. Most importantly, it reminds us that the love of those who have passed on continues to watch over and protect us, just as Aschenputtel's mother had promised. The end.